In the quiet city of Portland, Oregon, where rain often tapped gently against windows and the scent of fresh coffee seemed to linger on every corner, lived a young woman named Emily Carter. Emily was 29 years old, a graphic designer who worked from home most days. Her laptop always open with colors and sketches spread across her digital canvas. She had grown up in Portland, surrounded by the evergreens and the sound of distant rivers, and she carried within her a love for the calm beauty of the Pacific Northwest. Her heart, however, was often a place of turbulence. She was engaged to a man named Ryan Mitchell, a 31-year-old entrepreneur who had started his own small tech company. Ryan was charming, intelligent, and ambitious, the kind of man who could walk into any room and make people feel as if they had known him for years. When Emily first met him at a local art gallery 2 years earlier, she felt an instant spark, the kind of connection people often wrote about but rarely experienced. They fell in love quickly, and within a year, Ryan proposed to her under the glowing lights of Portland's downtown waterfront. Emily had said yes without hesitation, her heart racing with excitement, convinced that their love was strong enough to last a lifetime. Yet as the wedding date drew closer, a quiet unease began to settle in her chest. It wasn't about Ryan's love for her, she knew he cared deeply, but there were moments when his work seemed to overshadow everything else. Nights when he would come home late, exhausted, barely able to hold a conversation, and weekends when business calls kept him distracted. Emily tried to remind herself that this was temporary, that building a company demanded sacrifice, but deep down, she feared becoming invisible in his world. During one of these restless evenings, Emily met someone she never expected: Daniel Brooks. Daniel was 32, a writer who had recently moved to Portland after traveling across the country. They met at a local coffee shop, both reaching for the last blueberry muffin at the counter. Emily laughed and let him have it, joking that it must be fate. Daniel smiled in return, and something about his warmth and easy presence stayed with her long after she left the cafe. Over the next few weeks, their paths seemed to cross again and again. At the bookstore downtown, at the Saturday farmers market, even at a mutual friends gathering. Each time, their conversations grew deeper, weaving through stories of dreams, struggles, and life's unexpected twists. Daniel had a way of listening that made Emily feel truly seen, as though her words mattered in a way they sometimes didn't in her relationship with Ryan. She never planned for her heart to shift, but slowly, she found herself thinking about Daniel more often than she should. One rainy afternoon, as Emily sat sketching at the cafe, Daniel walked in and joined her. They spent hours talking, the world outside fading into a blur of raindrops against the glass. Emily told him about her upcoming wedding, her excitement, but also her fears. Daniel didn't judge or offer easy solutions. He simply listened, his eyes steady and kind. When she finished, he said softly, "Sometimes the hardest part isn't knowing who you love, it's knowing whether you're ready to give all of yourself to that person." His words stayed with her long after he left. The weeks leading up to the wedding felt like a storm inside Emily. She wanted to hold on to Ryan, the man who had given her so much love and support, but the pull she felt toward Daniel only grew stronger. She tried to avoid him, skipping her usual coffee runs and ignoring the bookstore, but fate had its own way of drawing them together. One evening, while walking home from work, she saw Daniel sitting alone on a park bench, notebook in hand. She almost kept walking, but something inside her refused. They talked for hours under the dim glow of street lamps, their laughter echoing in the quiet night. And then, as the silence grew heavy between them, Daniel looked at her with an expression she would never forget, an unspoken question in his eyes. Emily's heart raced and she stood quickly saying, "I can't. I'm engaged." Daniel nodded, pain flickering across his face, but he didn't try to stop her. She walked away that night, tears blurring her vision, knowing she was standing at a crossroads that could change everything. When she returned home, Ryan was asleep on the couch, his phone still in his hand, a half-written email glowing on the screen. Emily covered him with a blanket and sat silently beside him, watching the man she had promised to spend her life with. She loved him, there was no denying that, but the question was whether love was enough when she felt parts of herself slipping away. The night before the wedding, Emily couldn't sleep. She wandered the streets of Portland, the city lights reflecting on the wet pavement. Every memory of Ryan, the laughter, the proposals, the moments they held hands through struggles, flashed through her mind. But so did the memory of Daniel's quiet understanding, his words that cut through her doubts. At sunrise, Emily found herself at the same cafe where it all began, the scent of coffee filling the air. And there, sitting by the window, was Daniel. He looked up in surprise when she walked in, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. Finally, Emily said, "I came to say goodbye." Her voice trembled, but her eyes were steady. "I made a promise to Ryan, and I have to honor it. You've shown me what it feels like to be seen, and I'll carry that with me always. But I can't let myself fall any further." Daniel's expression was unreadable at first, then softened with sadness. He nodded slowly, closing his notebook. "I understand," he said quietly. "Just promise me one thing. Never lose yourself, no matter where life takes you." Emily's eyes filled with tears as she whispered, "I promise." The wedding day arrived with sunlight streaming through the stained glass windows of the small church. Emily walked down the aisle, her hands trembling as she held her bouquet. Ryan's face lit up when he saw her, his love undeniable in his eyes. And in that moment, Emily made a choice. Not out of fear, not out of obligation, but out of a deep belief that love, no matter how imperfect, could be nurtured if both hearts were willing. She said, "I do," her voice steady, though a quiet ache lingered in her chest. In the months that followed, Emily worked harder to communicate her needs, to let Ryan into the parts of her heart she had once kept hidden. To her surprise, he listened. He began carving out time for her, leaving work earlier, planning small adventures together. Their love wasn't perfect, but it grew stronger, built on honesty and effort. Yet sometimes, when Emily passed the cafe or the bookstore, she thought of Daniel. She wondered what he was writing, whether he had stayed in Portland or moved on to another city. And though she knew their story had ended, she also knew it had changed her forever. For Daniel had reminded her of something essential, that to love another fully, she first had to stay true to herself. Years later, Emily would still remember those rainy afternoons, the quiet words exchanged under street lamps, the ache of choices made. She would remember standing at the edge of temptation and learning that sometimes, love means choosing the harder path, the one that doesn't give instant satisfaction but builds a deeper, lasting bond. She would look at Ryan, older now,